Well, friends, it's time. It's time for the highest selling album of the 21st century here on Turtables Tea. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Cory.
And this week we will be discussing Adele's 21. If you didn't know, that was the album we were doing based on the intro. I'm very excited to do this because I was very fortunate to be able to attend a performance of the Weekends With Adele residency at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. And truly once in a lifetime experience for me. I've been wanting to see her for a long time, mostly because of this album and how it came out when I was a teenager, and it was a big part of my growing up and a lot of people's growing up, frankly. This was such a monumental release in my lifetime, and going to the show reminded me so much of that. So I'm really excited to be discussing it here today.
Yeah, man. It is definitely one for the ages, and that is to say the least. This is not only perfect coming up after you saw her live, but just perfect to do on what we do, breaking down music. This is one of those albums that need to be listened to and talked about because it has, at the very least, well, you said outsold everything else, but then also just really has made it through the test of time.
Yeah, it was a game changer then, and it's still huge today. So that's all you can really say about this one. And it's been so prevalent for so long at this point, this album, that it's almost hard to remember a time, for me at least, when it wasn't around. When the scene hadn't changed, it feels like a very distant memory because the whole scene did change in some major ways with the success of 21. And before that, Adele had some traction, but not everybody knew who she was. This album made her a household name.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is her second album, and it was following up a successful first album, not world-conquering, but it did its thing. She's a British artist, so it mostly got its attention there. It had some crossover success in the US, and she won a Grammy for Best New Artist. Definitely not an example of the so-called Best New Artist curse, because she went on to even greater success after winning that award, and it was the first of many Grammys in her case.
Well-deserved Grammys, too.
Oh, I completely agree. And all around, I will say that may be a hot tea take. I know it was not popular when she won Album of the Year in 2017, but that's a great album too, 25. But we're talking about 21 today. But she started work on this album not long after that Grammy win. And she was in a relationship with a man 10 years her senior. And she started work on it while still with this man, but it wasn't very productive. And she worked with the same guy she worked with on her debut 19, and she didn't feel it was very productive. Only one of the songs worked on in those early sessions ended up making it on to 21 as we know it today. But this relationship ended up collapsing pretty much overnight, in part because of this song that she wrote during those sessions. We will get to that. And then she just really channeled how she was feeling into her writing and her music. And she met up with a few different producers, such as Paul Epworth, Fraser T. Smith, Ryan Tedder, and Dan Wilson. And there was thought that the whole album would be produced by Rick Rubin because she was recording for Columbia. It would have been a natural fit. And he does play a big part on this album, but she actually didn't love all his arrangements of the songs. And some songs she decided were fine the way they were, and that they were going to do it that way. And that was a pretty bold move for Adele to be that confident in her artistry, to know this is how it should sound and this is what's going to go on the album.
Yeah, it's on paper when you first hear somebody saying no or like shunning any of Rick Rubin's guidance or production or anything, you're like, whoa. And if it's a woman, maybe I'm just speaking for me, but I automatically think diva. And while she might be in a diva club of singers. I don't feel like that was a diva move. And from what I've read, only heightened the respect that Rick Rubin has for her as an artist.
Yeah, and she did admit that Rubin pushed her and she found working with him daunting, but he did want to make her better because he'd seen her live and he wanted to capture that sound. And I do think they successfully did that because she did draw on the piano based British soul from the first album was used, but she also went into music that she heard on while on tour for that first album in America, which really was the southern country music she was hearing in Nashville, and she incorporated more of that American sound, and really it helped make her her own artist because at first she came up with a wave of post Amy Winehouse white British soul singers. Another big one was Duffy. And they all got comparisons to Winehouse. And Adele's even said she owes her career to Amy Winehouse. Which,
Again, maybe I'm speaking for me, but I feel like you're hard pressed not to listen to Adele and have at least one little tiny thought of Winehouse. In no way am I saying that the stylings or musicality is lifted from Winehouse. Like she's not biting off her tracks anyway, but there is just, in my opinion, more so of a beauty that is there and a raw emotion paired with that beautiful, beautiful voice on both sides that make me think about one or the other while I'm listening to the prior.
yes. And it's an important thing to know. I think one of the main criticisms that she faced, which at this time it didn't feel like there were many criticisms of this music, but it was she's too similar to Winehouse. But I mean, to me, I think many would agree this is where she came into her own to be Adele as we would come to know her. But there's some things that people forget about Winehouse. I think Adele just had a more accessible image than Amy Winehouse did because unfortunately Winehouse got a lot of attention for her personal troubles, and she had a edge to her in her look that, and even in her songs, frankly, that Adele doesn't have. Adele's power is her relatability, and that was a big part of why 21 connected the way that it did in
Wine,
2011.
yeah, Winehouse also had, maybe just in my opinion, but a more standoffish vibe when it came to dealing with press in any sense. Where on the other side, Adele at this time, we won't go into future Adele, but regardless, for the most part, almost the whole entire part, she is a true English lady. She's a true step back proper lady in those respects, which it really aids to people liking her, or her being more relatable and immediately catching people's eye.
Yes. And now to go back to 2011, that was the first time I'd ever heard of Adele. This album was released first in Europe in it was early 2011 all around. It was end of January for the UK and Europe, and didn't come out till almost a month later. On February 22nd, 21 was released in the US. So after the UK release. And I remember seeing like the hype for this album on my iTunes homepage. It showed up like in the scroll at the top. It would be for about upcoming stuff like Adele 21. And I thought, who's Adele? Why is this being promoted here? I didn't know Chasing Pavements or any of 19. But I was intrigued by the image of her because all of the photography for this album was in black and white. And I thought that's so different, particularly for 2011, because we were in the dance pop era of top 40 radio, and I partook in that. I listened to a lot of that, but it was definitely a contrast from the more colorful motifs we were seeing in pop music from your Katy Perry's and Rihanna's. It did stick out to me immediately, and I thought, who is this Adele? I'm curious to know what she is, and soon enough we all would know what she was. It didn't take too long. Because it actually debuted at number one with 352,000 copies sold. That was she even that year she even had a higher first week total in the US than Britney Spears, which I was really shocked to find out. But
That's wild.
she was popular enough for that and had enough traction. But the album stayed. It ended up being in the top 10 for 84 weeks. It was the highest selling album in the US of both 2011 and 2012. The last album to do that was Michael Jackson's Thriller.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, so
Wow.
that's insanity. And even though she's a British artist, this album really had its greatest success in America. And speaking as Americans here, I know for myself, it really was a big change because just being in that dance pop artificial of sorts era with these your Katies and your Gagas, they were putting out an image to you and they were making this high beats per minute dance music. And a lot of that stuff was fun, but there was definitely an audience that wanted something more relatable. And Adele provided that. This ended up being the perfect time, and we didn't even know it. This was situated still in between all of those artists. They didn't go away.
No.
But Adele came in like a hurricane and she dominated, and it was music everybody seemed to like. Because when I was like, it came out, I was like end of middle school going into high school. Freshman year high school is when this album was really dominant, and everybody I knew liked the songs on it, and our parents liked them too.
Yeah. I'll go out on a limb and saying the scene was almost emotionally not drained, but just desperate for some emotion. And she fit that perfectly. She, in my opinion, hit in a perfect storm because not only was the scene not, or the American pop scene not inundated with a bunch of that sound, but it had almost none of it. And on top of that, she came in with a normal person, normal, beautiful woman's body and didn't conform to this quote unquote perfect looking pop star. And as an American, I feel like she got draw there too, where she almost was outside of her being English, almost was, like your next door neighbor American girl, what you want, something comforting, so to speak, almost like some comfort food music there, and a comfort food artist. But what I'm saying is she really hit the scene and there was nothing like her on any level. And that had to help, not only against her chops, because she's got them.
Oh yeah, I mean the voice has always been there, but she's even said this is really where her songwriting took off, and she wrote the songs that connected the people because heartbreak is relatable to all. And
Yeah.
even if you don't personally relate to these songs, I think it's pretty hard to not connect with them in some way. She just hit that moment for everybody. And
I mean, when you got Rick Rubin, and I'm paraphrasing, I should have wrote this down. When you got Rick Rubin saying like, it was such a personal recording session, such a raw and emotional recording session that these professional session players are actually listening across the band like they were a group that had been playing together and knew each other, and really just riffing off, because they didn't know these weren't overdub recording sessions, and that's Rick Rubin's own words. They were in there playing live and riffing off her emotion, which is so awesome, especially when it's coming out of a Swami's mouth like Rick Rubin.
yeah, and everybody was on her team at this point in time. I've seen more retrospective criticism of this album and Adele in general, including some recently that I would like to address, but we're not there yet. But at the time, the industry was eating her up as much as the public. She dominated the Grammys that year. Of course, this one album of the year, and everybody knew it was going to. It was Adele's award night to lose. And when she did, as she
Yeah.
should have. I don't think it was too disputed. The next album of the year win was a lot more disputed. That's a discussion for another day. I felt she was unfairly criticized for winning because she didn't even want the award. I don't think over Beyonce that time, but everybody seemed to agree that this one was hers and she deserved it. And she's continued to be successful, even though at her show she admitted to being a part-time singer because she takes her time to put out an album. But there recently was a list from Apple Music of their 100 best albums of all time. This list has been quite controversial. And then a lot of the controversy does have to do with the fact that some more contemporary albums were ahead of albums that have long been considered classics. The number one album on there was The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Of course.
What list? Stone's list?
No, Apple Music.
Okay.
Not Rolling Stone.
I was like, wait a minute. Okay.
Miseducation was very high on that list, but it was not number one. But people are like, well, how can that be ahead of Thriller? And there's a lot more examples like that. And I mean, it's a list. You gotta take it with a grain of salt. And I don't disagree with it. And this album was one of the choices that got some flack. This was ranked at number 15, which that's a high all time. That's a very high ranking. And it was ahead of the two albums trailing it were Joni Mitchell's Blue and Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. So yeah, that's obviously going to be a controversial ranking.
Yeah, but let's go honest there. This, in all honesty, I just had I think we should run down the Apple 100 if it's this crazy controversial. But I mean, if you're being honest there, those are two great all-time albums. Do they stack up against this album? That's pretty tough. I guess we'll see in this episode of Turtables and Tea, not to be cheesy here, but I wonder, because knowing both of those albums fairly well, I don't know if they beat out in a race here against this one, no matter how old they are. Joni Mitchell, that's a tough sell, but oof, I'd like to see this list.
Yeah, you have to look at it. It is something, and there's a lot of head scratchers on there beyond that, but we're gonna focus on this one for now because we could go very deep into it, but we don't. We got stick to the script here as we do it. Not that we're scripted, but we got stick to the topic at hand. And there was a lot of criticism, but some of the commentary I saw seemed to be people criticizing the fact that this album was included on the list, period. And that I have an issue with, because whether you like this album or not, whether it's your cup of tea, this is an all-timer. We just discussed its impact, and it's held up. It's continued to be popular, and it may not have been a groundbreaking sound, but it did change the game. We heard just a lot more organic sounds on Top 40 radio after this. After this, we got to hear bands like Mumford and Sons and the Lumineers on the Top 40 radio. Ed Sheeran broke through after this. There were just a lot more ballads on the radio in the aftermath of 21 and when 25 wasn't out yet. And there were definitely attempts to recreate Adele's success. I think at the time, this artist has gone in a very different direction since. And at the time, I think the closest we got was Sam Smith and their debut album In the Lonely Hour. In terms of success, I do like that album, but obviously Sam Smith has gone in a very different direction since the day.
Yeah, man.
But this is way before Unholy. Sam Smith was a very different artist in 2014.
Gotcha.
But I mean, this was a game changer. Everybody bought the CD. They were buying the CD. CDs were thought to be obsolete. They bought this CD, the people did. So this is an all-timer. I don't care whether it's your favorite of all time or not. We're not going to deny its impact. That I have an issue with, because this one I can attest to. I lived it, and it's hard. You don't have music as we know it today without this album. We just don't.
I'm gonna fight that fight. Come and fight me in the comments and prove to me that it doesn't belong on a top 100 greatest albums of all time. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I
Please
thought,
make a point, make a valid point. Come, I challenge everybody listening.
yeah,
Make a valid point.
I mean, I thought Rolling Stone putting it at 136 on their 500 greatest was too low.
136 on five. That's almost
That's
like
a
the same rating, you know?
that's a very good score, but I thought there were some ahead of it that I did not agree with. That's all I'll say
Yeah.
about that. But that can be said of all of these lists. That Apple list is wild, but what
Yeah.
are you gonna do? But my point is, this is still absolutely a top 100 album of all time, regardless of whether you rank it. Regardless of where you rank it. And with that being said, I am ready to do what we do here and spin this album. Of course, before we do that, please subscribe where you're listening to us. Leave us a nice rating and review. Follow us on social media, links in the description. So the album begins with Rolling in the Deep. So this song, co-written with and produced by Paul Epworth, he convinced her to write a fierce tune the day after she broke up with her boyfriend, and it ended up being this song, which she's described musically as a gospel disco song. But
Okay.
that but it was also inspired by Nashville. And yeah, it was the lead single in the UK, November 2010, a few months later in the US. This was the one. This was the game changer. It was a worldwide hit. In the US, it topped the charts for 7 weeks and was the #1 song of the year. And just to show you how different this was, the song it knocked off the top spot was E.T. by Katy Perry featuring Kanye West.
Because people wanted this sound. I'm telling you, we were thirsty for this sound. We didn't even know it.
Yeah. Though this song was replaced at #1 by Give Me Everything by Pitbull. So it wasn't.
That just proves it. You know.
This was in between all of that, folks. It was a wild time on Top 40 radio, but everybody liked the song. It's held up. Now it's thought of as an all-timer. Of course, it's sold over 20 million digital copies worldwide. And one song and record of the year at the Grammys. And it feels kind of silly talking about this song because obviously everybody knows this song. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it really is bigger than itself. It's everywhere. It always has been. It feels like it really always has been everywhere. From the first time I heard this song, it felt like it never went away. Sometimes that can get on my nerves. This one never really has. It always is. It always just hits the correct way for me. Talk about that Nashville, and another reason why America jumped on that. It screams Nashville to me. It's I chuckled when we said disco, but I mean, you even get almost like a boot stomp clap rhythm in the background of it, like so it screams to those country roots. And I another reason why she was over so well immediately in the US. Musically, it's just a killer. Musically, it is her, and it's the start of this album. So it's a strong opener because it's right from the heart. She gives us that classic Adele. There's a deepness to her voice, even though her register is high, that I always love. And she screams it at us on this first track. It's an amazing song. It really is.
yeah, and she sings it in her beautiful, soulful tone, but she got all of that anger conveyed through this song. Like, this is an angry song lyrically, and she didn't have to shout and scream a la Alanis Morissette and You Ought to Know, but she made her point very clear, her own way. And it was pretty quick after this, you saw the memes, don't piss off Adele or she's going to write a song about you, because this was so scathing. And yeah, hearing it live was, of course, epic. It's like this song I've known forever, hearing her sing it live. But the funniest thing to me was there was a bit of controversy over this song being on the radio because there's one line where it sounds to me like she says, "And I'll lay your ship bare." I always heard ship, but apparently some people heard shit, and then that line got edited out on the radio, which I thought was silly because I thought she's saying ship. But at the show, she sang shit. Loud and
Oh,
clear,
yeah.
I heard her sing, "I'll lay your shit bare." I thought, I
Okay.
mean, it's her show. She can do what she wants to. It's pretty in keeping with her personality, actually, to sing that at her show in Vegas. But yeah, modern classic. It's been covered by Linkin Park, Aretha Franklin, and countless others.
Lincoln Park. I haven't heard that one.
I didn't know it existed until pretty recently, but they did it that year, which is
Kudos to
wild.
anybody. Yeah, kudos to anybody that can hit this or at least mimic it where you're not like, this is crap.
Yeah. I know poor Aretha, obviously she did her thing with the vocals, but the production on her version was underwhelming, to put it lightly.
Nerd.
But
That stinks.
Still the Queen of Soul, rest in peace.
Yeah, man.
But we're going to keep the soulful, somewhat angry, but a bit more sassy this time vibe going with the next song. Rumor has it, co-written and produced by Ryan Tedder of One Republic, and he'd done some work with other artists at this point too. And he said she recorded her vocal for this song in one take. So I believe it. It's a killer sound.
It sounds like she did. It really, I laugh because, you never think about that, but it sounds like she meant every word and said it right out right and then done.
Yeah. And actually, you would think this song was maybe inspired by tabloids. Adele said it was actually about her friends believing stories about her. And she wrote this really funny and catchy song in response. And it was pretty quickly singled out as a highlight, and rightly so. I first heard this song, it was like the iTunes sampler before Spotify was really prevalent. That's what you do. You listen to a sample. I was like, ooh, I like this song. Rumor has it. Very catchy, fun tune. Because I didn't even get the CD until I had like a gift card for Best Buy for Christmas. Then I actually bought the CD. But it was just like, okay, I like this song. And it was supposed to be the third single, but another song ended up winning out. It became the fourth single, reached number 16 on the Hot 100. But the charts don't, everybody knew this song.
Yeah.
So it seems like a low chart placement. It did have longevity because everyone knows it. And but some of it was because everybody had bought the album. I mean, Katy Perry could top the charts with her fourth single, but not as many people bought her album as they did this. So, what would you rather have? I'd rather have the album sales. And it's still a killer song. Of course, it was on her set list. I thought it actually made the best use of the video screen because they used a cool filter on her as she sang this wonderful song.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is such a wonderful song. There's so many there's so much I could say about this song. I'll try to just go through a little bit of my notes. I love the amount of changes of percussion in this song, even though it doesn't stray from the beat too much or change beat too much. It really takes us on this wild percussion ride throughout, and it just jams. It's fun. It it almost feels like talking to a friend. And it's wild to hear you say that she wrote about her friends, because I pictured it in I I would have to think the way everybody else does, and it's like, to an ex-lover, but it's somebody that you have history with, and the whole nine, so you're talking very candidly, and that comes across in the music, the candidness there, but it's actually to her friends, which is another level of, for me, why she sings it so comfortably, and it comes across. It's a great number two. Going into this album critically and trying to act like I've never heard it before, it scares me because it's so pronounced this early on. Like two real in a trivia night, I would have had this as the second single because I feel like that's the saturation. But the strength so far in this album is a little discerning in a nervous sense of, okay, well, what do you got left after Rolling in the Deep and Rumor Has It? You know?
Yeah, and there's a lot, especially with this next track, which is Turning Tables, also co-written with Ryan Tedder. This one was produced by Jim Abyss, who produced most of her debut. And this is an orchestral ballad where Adele is saying goodbye to being manipulated and having arguments turned on her. And I've been there before, having somebody turn the tables on you like that in an argument, that manipulative bullshit that just gets to you. This song is always cut deep on that level. Just such a powerful song, and just everything about it. Like, it has a movie-esque sound to it, but it earns it because she just wrings every emotion out of her delivery on this song, and it floors me every time. It wasn't a US single, it was a UK single. It still charted on the Hot 100 because it got enough traction on its own. And this is the first song from the album she did at the show. It was number 3 in her set list, actually.
Nice.
And she just did it at the piano. Nobody else was on stage with her other than her and the pianist, but the song didn't need any more than that because it speaks for itself. I always love hearing this song. It gets me every time.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful piece, and especially after what I just said about wondering if there can be anything that stands to the power of the first two. This one is not only perfectly placed in the fact of it brings us down into a little bit of stop, but it also is perfectly placed because the powerful voice that we've been blessed with in the first two tracks, that's almost screaming at us in a sense, is now just as powerful alone in a room with a piano, with the reverb of the room really being the only effect on this whole entire song. It's so beautiful. You said it has that movie quality, that there's such a beautiful cinematic build in this. And usually we get, maybe I'll just speak for me, but usually when I use the word cinematic, a lot of the time that ends up with strings in the composition, but here it's just conveyed by this beautiful piano and voice, and it never gets old. I'm with you on that. It really never gets old. This song, it builds so well musically that it's another one, just like Rolling in the Deep for me, that always hits correctly. There's never a time that I can hear this and be like, I'm not in the mood for that.
No, never ever. And it's that cinematic quality of a song like this that made Adele a natural choice to do the next James Bond theme at this point in time, which ended up being Skyfall.
That's a good it's a good point, and also a little anecdotal. Skyfall was in my playlist for like way too long. Actually, it was weird listening to a Bond theme song, but I love that song so much.
Oh, it's so good. And it was a show highlight because, they had to bring the visuals out for that one, too.
Oh,
that was
cool.
epic.
That's cool.
But she did most of the songs from this album at the show, actually, including the next one, which is Don't You Remember, the first Rick Rubin production here. And it was co-written with Dan Wilson, who at this point was best known for being the frontman of the band Semisonic, a one-hit wonder. Closing Time was their one hit.
Okay.
So that guy, but he's gone on to write and produce for other artists. And
nice.
He leaves a big mark on this album. This is his first co-writing here. And the biggest one we'll be getting to, the biggest mark, because it's major and has filled his pockets for life. But it wasn't this song. But this is the most stripped down production so far, which is interesting. For Rick Rubin sometimes gets criticized for overproducing. Definitely not on this song. We get something more laid back. It's kind of like a sonic balm after the intensity of the previous few songs, because those took us on a ride, but still really tugs at the heartstring because she's asking her ex if he remembers why he loved her. It's like, oh, wow, just really getting you in the feels there. She really like, just don't you remember the reason you love me? It's like she's really pouring her heart out on this one, and that works very well over this stripped down production. It allows a story to be told and the vocal to shine through, and it's another beautiful song.
It is another beautiful one. I like the bomb. It is like a bomb. I dig that. A musical bomb at the BALM bomb at the
Yes.
fourth track here. It is definitely not a bomb at the fourth track. It really brings us into a much more laid back sense. Not knowing this was the Ruben first listen through, there was a change in production that was clearly visible, but it didn't take me out of the album. It more so intrigued me here. Now knowing it, Ruben's all over this track. There is a very, very American style drum that hits later on this track that we really don't see much, maybe much more than maybe one more time on this album, but just a really neat way to do it. And it sits right here at a number 4. We're on a perfect pacing, in my opinion, as well. A really, really well done.
Yes, we are. And one of my favorite moments of Weekends with Adele was at one point, she does this during every show, I believe. She does a seat lottery where she moves somebody from the balcony to the second row.
That's
Sadly,
awesome.
sadly it wasn't me, but a woman and a companion came down. They didn't know each other before the show, and Adele was talking to them because the woman had traveled by herself from San Francisco to be there, and then the girl next to her joined her, and Adele was chatting with them, and then she says, yeah, I dedicate this next song to both of you. Well, it's very depressing, but you get the sentiment, and the next song was this.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I love that Adele has a sense of humor about herself and her song, because she even said, yeah, I know, I have mostly slow songs. I know.
That's
Like,
awesome.
she has that way about her that I love. I just Part of what makes her relatable to the people. She's very interactive with folks at her shows, which I really appreciate.
She's real. I
Yeah.
mean, not to get off on a tangent, but I mean, the standing up guy. I'm all about if you want to stand at a concert, you stand at a concert. I don't care if everybody's sitting down. And she stopped her show, like, what are you doing? He's trying, he's doing his thing. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
No, which one was that?
She stopped the show, and it was a show that it was a predominantly seated, almost in like a red seated theater kind of deal. But this person was up and pumped and singing along and having a blast and not messing up anybody else's day. And people from like rows behind are coming up and very rudely trying to make him sit down, to where the security comes and tries to make him sit down, and she stops the concert and is like, what is going on over there? And if that's about, and I'm paraphrasing, but like, if that's about him standing up, you can cut that shit out. He can stand up if he wants to, and then goes back in.
I mean, that's her at this show. She said, stand up if you want to. If the person's blocking your view, turn around. You'll see me on the giant screen.
I wonder if it's like she says that now from that point. Yeah,
no,
but good for her.
She just went viral because she heard somebody, it sounded like a guy at her show shouted out, Pride sucks.
Oh.
Because it's Pride Month. And she said, did you just say that Pride sucks at my fucking show?
Oh my god.
She was not having that. And that went viral. And it was great. She's not going to take any of your crap. She's not going to do it.
No, we didn't get into it, but she's a get down lady in outside life.
Oh, yes.
We don't have to go too far, but she's a wild one.
Oh, no, I learned it because before we get to the next song, tangent time. For my 15th birthday, I was not expecting this present. My parents actually bought me the Adele Live at Royal Albert Hall concert movie. I was not expecting. I said, "Oh, I didn't expect this." They said we thought you'd like it because they knew I was really into her, and I watched it. And the first words she said in the show after like the first song or two were Royal Albert fucking Hall. I was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, she's a get down lady. She's a
But
Tottenham Spurs or Tottenham Hotspurs fan. She's a get down one, man.
yeah, but she's hilarious,
Yeah.
and that's why that's part of the reason that I love her. But of course, also because of that beautiful voice, which we hear prominently displayed on track 5, which is Set Fire to the Rain, written with and produced by Fraser T. Smith. I mean, she sets fire to the rain by leaving her man. You know, everybody knows this song. I mean, this got traction before it was a single. I remember this album came out like my last months of middle school, and I was talking about Adele with one of my classmates, and this one of them said, "Oh, I love her song, Set Fire to the Rain," and I hadn't heard it yet, but of course, soon enough, everybody knew it. I heard it in commercials even before it was a single. And then it was everywhere. It was the third single, and it topped the charts, and everybody knew it. And yeah, it's always just been another beautiful, epic song. Not as orchestral as Turning Tables, but the lyrics tell the story right there. Set fire to the rain. I mean, that's all you need to know. And of course, at her show, it was a great visual moment because before her, fire was set to the rain. Pretty epic to see.
I heard that.
Great use of the space.
That's so cool. So cool. This is, I mean, so cool for such a cool song. This one, you would think everybody knows this one. I never knew the title to this song. I've always sang this one, but not known the title. That's commonplace for me. I love this here at the number 5 spot.
I
And
think too.
after like a good 8 listens this past time that we've had here, I got to a point where I started to question if there was in this track a monotonous sound, or like a bit of repeat from the tracks we've had before. But I've come to terms with it in such a more beautiful way, and not I didn't have to make myself. There is aspects of all 4 tracks that we get
Yes.
musically before this, and so it's such a strong 5 here, and it's set so well. It's a on top of being a beautiful song, there is a nice little ribbon tied on the first almost half of this album here, and it's a really well put together composition. I always dig this one, even without knowing the name. I used to always sing this is a great tune.
Yeah, I've never gotten sick of this one, even though
No.
I've heard it a million times at this point. It hasn't gone away, and I don't ever want it to.
Heard.
But now we're going to go to one of the less present songs, if such a thing is possible, on an album that sold 31 million copies worldwide. This is track 6, He Won't Go, written with Paul Epworth, produced by Rick Rubin. And this song is actually not entirely about Adele and her situation. It's about friends of hers. And it was a couple she was really close with, and the man had a heroin addiction and had to go to rehab. So really, he won't go. They're talking about rehab, which I had no idea until researching for this episode. And it kind of makes sense. I don't think this song it's never hit quite as hard for me as some of the other songs on the album, but I've always really enjoyed it. Like, it's a song I like sometimes don't always seek out, but whenever I listen to it all the way from, like, that's such a good song. It's like on a different album, this would be a highlight, but because it's surrounded by so much, it doesn't rise to that occasion. But yeah, if this were on the one before or after, it would be one of the top songs here. There just was so much coming out of her at this point in time that this falls right in the middle. But I do like it. It has a very nice sound to it. It just suffers a bit by comparison, but I still really enjoy it.
I can definitely see where you're coming from on it not hitting, but I have a different, and I started to talk about this in the last track, but I have now a full critical look through on this, this one almost seems like an interlude in the way it is placed, because we come to a whole different kind of styling here, and we started off very slow. We get into this hip hop styling here that, of course, Rick Rubin is on top of and loving. But if you're a longtime listener, you might know that I have a love affair with Miss Lauryn Hill and her voice, and the way she, really the femininity that she brings with having a powerful voice. And this song is way on that level. Sorry, Lauren. Adele kills that genre, so to speak, or that feeling here, and it's such a neat transition, because, not spoiling too much, but in my opinion, a lot of the rest of the album has a different sound than what we got before. Almost Two Thoughts, and I was at war with myself during the critical listening on this, that this should be paced in a different way or presented in a different way, where the two sounds on the album weren't contrasting so much. But I really do feel that it's done not only on purpose, but in such a really awesome way. And this is the transition into that for me. So I love this song. It hits on so many different levels, especially giving me a hip hop feel here. That's something that speaks true. I can't say enough good things about this number 6.
I mean, she had to do the Lauryn Hill thing, because Lauryn Hill sure as hell wasn't doing it in 2011.
I still, when I listen to this track, want Lauryn Hill to have a verse on this song. It would be so epic.
Yeah, that would be an epic collaboration. Maybe one day it will happen. Who knows? One can hope. But
Lauren, get your ass down to Vegas.
Yeah.
Don't be late. Yeah, right.
Yeah, Adele shows up on time. She doesn't play that game.
Yeah, but Adele probably already booked her like 3 weeks ago, and she still ain't there.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Yes, but this is a no features album. We don't have them here, and sure. We get pure just Adele voice and piano with track number 7, which is Take It All, which was the first song written for the album, the only song from those early sessions that made it through. And she co-wrote it with E.G. White and produced by Jim Abyss. Again, same team as that first album. And she wrote it while still in this relationship, but the song ended up being the catalyst for her breakup, because they had a huge fight after she showed her ex this song. And then the relationship was over. And, well, it is that kind of song. This is an emotional one, because she's like, just take it all. I'm giving too much, so just take it. Oh man, this one's always hit me so hard. It's a stark piano ballad, but it's just so powerful every time I hear it. Like, the song doesn't need any of those bells and whistles, because the vocals are so powerful, and the sentiment and emotion, it's so raw, and you just hear all that heartache. And this song floors me every single time. This might be a hot tea take. This is my favorite non-single on the album. I was really kind of pleasantly surprised to see it on her Vegas set list. It has been the whole time. I thought, ooh, Take It All's on there. That's awesome. And so I was super happy to hear this song. I mean, it was a stripped down piece again. You only had her pianist and her backup vocalists, and just as beautiful live as I thought it would be. This song, I never get tired of hearing this one either. And this is one I do stick out, because I just need that power sometimes.
And I hear you. We keep saying we don't get tired of them, but that speaks to the beauty of this album. This one is such a neat. I know I said no strings, and I was speaking of the intro earlier on Turning Tables, but this one is the real true her in a room with a piano. And I love it here at the 7, especially on my hypothetical 2 parts of this album musically. I love it here because it is that power, that raw, beautiful power that we got in the first half of the album, but it has almost a different take here. And this is the true beginning of what I will say is the second musical movement in the second half of this album here. We come off this hip hop where we went really subconscious listener went into a much slower and more pronounced beat, and then we got it stripped from us, but the power on top of it is what propels the rest of the album, in my humble opinion. But it's such a beautiful we're going to say it a million times, but such a beautiful song and really well done here at number 7.
Yes, but it is a downer, and there have been a
It
lot of
is.
slow songs. So it's time for a more upbeat one, which we get with track number 8, which is I'll Be Waiting, a Paul Epworth production. Most joyous song here, sonically. She's going to be waiting for her man here, like come to me, I'll be waiting. If any song on here reminds me of Amy Winehouse, it's this one. Just that real retro soul sound really gives me those Back to Black vibes. It always has. And I'm always happy to hear this. And if any song on this album is going to be called underrated, it's this one. It's the least streamed of these on Spotify. And I don't understand why, because I'm always so happy to hear this song. It's just a burst of sunshine into a day if you hear it. So I don't know what that's all about. I'll say it now. Justice for I'll Be Waiting.
Justice. They're crazy. They are crazy. I've been talking to people all week about this track. This is my shit on this album. Sorry for cursing. I love it. It's so unexpected here at the 8. Not only does it fit into this second half of the album that I keep pushing here, but it is so unexpected, so beautiful, so soulful, but almost reminiscent of some like Mississippi rock and roll in a sense coming through here. This is a song that I'd love to hear any of the jam bands I go see cover. Shit, as long as you're doing it at Justice, get at it. Like Billy Strings cover this. Fish maybe cover this, but like Grace Potter cover this. Like get out there,
Dave
cover
Matthews
this, let people
cover it.
Dave Matthews would be great doing this. Great song. So unexpected. This is my shit. No spoilers on my favorite song of the album.
Oh.
This is that shit.
Oh. It is a good one, but actually the most popular non-single on this album is the next track, One and Only. A real gospel kind of ballad we get here. This one was produced by Rick Rubin, co-written with Dan Wilson and Greg Wells. Adele said it was about a man who she thought she'd end up marrying, not the ex that most of this album is about. We don't know who that ex is. She's kept that a secret for a long time. So good for her for doing that. But yeah, like people have sung this song on American Idol. Something about it just really is speaking to folks. And I do understand it. I do enjoy this song. It is a more positive, full-on love song amidst all these heartbreak songs. And that is nice to hear on this album. It is the longest song here. And I wouldn't say that this song overstays its welcome. But I do think that other tracks here pack more of a punch in a shorter period of time than One and Only does. So, and that's a minor criticism for me of this song. I do really enjoy it. I don't think it's a skip by any means, but I don't quite get why it's the one non-single that people seem to gravitate to the most. There's others that do it more for me, specifically the 2 previous tracks. I go back to those way more than I do this one, but still a beautiful song.
Yeah, it is. This is the linchpin in my second half hypothesis here, because not only is this the first one that's super reminiscent of the sound we get in the first half of the album, and at first I had a real problem with it because it almost felt out of place here. But I'm going to speak just for me, at this point realized that we have come out of the heartbreak of this album truly here. And not only is it a callback to the beginning of the album, because this is the same person, the same artist here. We get this beautiful love take of it. And this one always gets me coming through the album as a whole, because it's almost like a victory song in a Broadway musical from me, especially the way it's paced here on this album. It has that gospel quality, and I love it, man. I can't speak enough, as you can see, on the intricacies of the pacing and plotting of this album.
Yeah, they definitely went all out in making a narrative work for this album. And somehow, with all this singer-songwriter goodness, we got a cover on here of a very well-known song. Track 10 is Love Song. This is a cover of the Cure hit from 1989. And Adele and Rick Rubin gave it a bossa nova makeover. Apparently, Rubin originally created a demo of this sound for Barbara Streisand to cover the song. He didn't end up working with her, but Adele heard this demo and loved it. I'm really glad it went to Adele instead of Streisand. I think Streisand would have oversang the shit out of this, and it wouldn't have worked for me. But Adele, she doesn't go full belt on this. She just glides over the song like a great jazz singer. And that's what this torch bossa nova rendition needs. And she pulls back and does her thing, but still conveys the lyrics to the listener so well. And it was, as well known as this song is, it's weird to say covering such a big hit is a risk, but on your breakup album, it kind of is. To put this on there, you put this really beloved tune that people have known for over 20 years at this point, and you're using it as part of your 21 narrative. Like, these are the songs that represent me at 21 and what I was going through. And you picked this song, but yet it works beautifully. It's not out of place at all. It fits with everything that we've been hearing. This song touches on the themes that we've heard throughout the album, and it works beautifully, and she made it her own. Not an easy feat, and Adele and Rubin pulled it off. I would consider this Rubin's greatest production accomplishment here because of that.
Yeah, we are not scripted. I know Charlie said that earlier, but you are making the perfect landing for where I was going with this second half of this album. And more so at this point, now I am convinced at this cover that we're getting this full character. And I also look back to Rubin and how much he praised her for being in the moment and being her. We're literally watching this 21-year-old breakup all the way from Rolling in the Deep. And then now we're at the point for this character / artist that they are, one, happy enough, and two, confident enough to listen to a cover song or a love song that they know, or in this case, on the artist side of the hash, cover this highly loved composition here that we know. So now we're in this beautiful, happy part of the album. We're almost to this beautiful ending here, and I couldn't think of a better song. It's almost at this point for me like we're watching a movie. And this is the one, what's the word I'm looking for? This is the one contracted cover. This is the one contracted hit that we put in the movie here, and it works so well. Now, with all my rantings aside, she did not only not oversing this, she perfectly undersang it, to the point where when my first listen, I wasn't convinced that this was Love Song, because she didn't do the proper melody in the beginning. But I think it was such a beautiful choice. And then you see, as she goes through, she keeps this, for lack of a better word, monotone melody here, and it sings so much more because it's not what we expect. I get so pumped about this one. I'm sorry if I ranted on long there, but it's such a fitting and perfect for my hypothesis here. Quote, the penultimate song,
Yes,
so to speak.
Yeah, it is the penultimate song. I'm sad we're getting to the end of this journey already. Oh man. But we've got a killer to end it off. It's none other than Someone Like You. Adele described this as the song that she wrote because she was tired of being such a bitch in songs like Rolling in the Deep and Rumor Has It.
Yep.
She started it herself, but she finished it with Dan Wilson, who we've already heard from a couple times on this album. This is his only production credit on the album. They produced a voice and piano version of this song, and Wilson thought Rubin was gonna add some bells and whistles to it and they do more with it. But the reaction in Adele's circle with just the demo was so strong that she couldn't change it. Like it made her mom cry. Her manager loved it.
Yeah.
They knew they had something here and they couldn't mess with it. And it ended up being it ended up being the smartest production choice throughout the whole making of this album, because this is a standard at this point. This song, everybody knows this. It was the second single, another #1 hit. It was actually the first song ever to top the Hot 100 that consisted of only a voice and a piano. In over 50 years, first song ever to do it was this one. And that's because this song is undeniable. It just, she's her, but like, at the same time, there's a resignation to this. Like, never mind, I'll find someone like you, but I'll move on. But you hear every bit of the heartache in this song. And what's so funny is you obviously hear her voice crack on that chorus. She does not attempt to hit those notes live ever. She didn't on the DVD I have. She certainly didn't when I saw her live. I didn't even care. I was so thrilled to see this defining song, really, of an era. It's hard to imagine a world without this song. It's so omnipresent. This has close to 2 billion streams on Spotify now, this track. It's never gone away. And at the show, it was pretty cool. Right before this, the whole audience saw themselves on the screen, on the video screen. It was facing us. And then she came out to sing it to us. But, well, she knew what she was doing. She knew she was creating a moment. She's like, you know what? You're about to hear me sing my most iconic song. You're going to see yourself doing it because it's that song. And I mean, I can't fault her for that. It is that song.
100 times over that song. It's 100 times over that song for its power, for its longevity. But in this case, I'm going to use one of your words, and that's defining. It's a defining song, not only for this album that we started with this powerful voice, but it was produced with effects and background singers. But we lost that baggage, so to speak, as we came through. The thing we didn't lose is this powerful voice, and usually accompanied by this beautiful piano. And it defines this whole entire album. And the end of my story here, it defines this 21-year-old who we've watched go through crazy heartbreak and breakup to come out on the other side in such a powerful and happy place. Even though this song might make people cry, and maybe or maybe not has made me cry on occasion, there is still joy inside of it, and it's such a fitting end for this album, but for this beautiful 21-year-old experience. She such an underrated artist, I feel, and it's crazy to say that, as you know, monumental as she is, but I feel like there's still parts of the world that don't realize what this woman is doing musically. And this, for me, this is her crowning achievement. Just such a gosh darn beautiful album, and it's finished off here with this track.
Yeah, it is. And this song, I mean, I talked about how Rolling in the Deep was everywhere. This didn't top the charts for quite as long, but this was, I felt, even more omnipresent than Rolling in the Deep.
This was like up there with some like Celine Dion Never Going Away ballad stuff. You know what I'm saying?
And it was like that immediately. And it just showed Rolling in the Deep wasn't a fluke. This is an artist who people want to hear what she has to say. And I mean, in that dance pop realm, actually, I remember hearing the dance remixes of this song on Top 40 radio. I even once heard it at a Sweet 16 that I went to my freshman year of high school because I was friends with older girls at the school, because of course I was. Because, if you know me, it makes sense. But yeah, in the middle of it's the dance remix of Someone Like You, because you just couldn't escape the song. And everybody I knew liked the song. I never heard anybody say, oh, I can't stand that song. No, it was everywhere. And yeah, it is that Celine Dion My Heart Will Go On ballad, even though it wasn't
Yeah.
attached to a movie. It's that
Yep.
song, and it still gets you all this time later.
Yeah.
Always will. I'll never get sick of this song, ever.
Yeah. No. No. Not at all.
Yeah. But yeah, there we have the end. There were a few bonus tracks with different editions of the album. There was one, I Found the Boy, which is a nice self-written song. It's fine, but there was a reason it was a bonus track. I think she knew it wasn't on the level of the other 11 tracks that we did get. Some versions had a couple of covers. One was If It Hadn't Been for Love by the Steel Drivers, which was Chris Stapleton's band before he got famous. She did it in her Live at Royal Albert Hall special, and I loved hearing her introduce the song saying, I love this band, I love the guy's voice. Of course, the sentiment of the song is killing his wife. So, a dark little song, but a cool track, and nice that she just shared a song that connected with her and likely influenced the sound of this album, and really a precursor to Chris Stapleton becoming a major player in country music. She covered this before he was that A-list name, and there was also the Brandy Carlisle cover, Hiding My Heart, which is nice, but not as noteworthy as the Chris Stapleton cover, in my opinion. But they weren't as essential as Love Song, obviously. We sung those praises a lot, but
Yeah.
yeah, now we have it, 21. I feel like we're gonna be on a similar page here. What's your final letter grade for this album?
Adele. I almost said Adele Rolling in the Deep. Adele-21 was such a cool one for me to go through. Not only thank you for bringing this one up to our attention and us doing it this week, but just on a musical experience, listening to it over and over again. It's tough to find holes in this album. Like from the hardest critical standpoint, I challenge people to find holes in this album. There are definitely no glaring holes in pacing or plotting, and musically, it is ironclad. This is one of those rare albums where there's really, in my opinion, nothing that isn't done to the tip top 100% of its worth. And for that, I'm giving this an A+.
A+ here too. That it's a no skip album.
Yeah.
It's perfectly paced. It's monumental. I couldn't give it anything less than an A+. And you already told us your favorite song. Do you want to repeat it for us?
Are you sure you know?
You said it was I'll Be Waiting.
No, I'm joking. It's I'll Be Waiting. For there's this there might be more music, like musicality based favorite songs on here, and I could go back and forth, but if I'm just going off pure happiness and almost like a selfish, it just has a very relatable feeling to me. I don't know what it is, but I love that song. I will listen to it on repeat.
Yeah. I mean, at least you picked the underrated cut, because I'm not going to. My favorite song on the album is Someone Like You.
Heard that. Hey, nothing wrong with that. Nothing
It
wrong
can't
at
be
all.
denied. Can't be denied.
Heard. And there's a story here. I'm telling you guys.
Oh, yeah. There is. This 21 story. I think beautiful. You are very on fire with that thought. Very much so. But yes, there we have it, 21. So, in case if you're a regular listener, you probably noticed this episode is out about 2 weeks after the last one that we did, and that's going to be the case for a bit here because we both work full time. We've got a lot going on, and we still want to do this for you, but we want to also put our best foot forward and give you the best content possible. And we think for a little bit, an episode every 2 weeks will do that the most effective way, at least for a little bit.
Yeah, man, we'll miss you as much as hopefully you'll miss us, but we'll be back at it. The summer has our calendars in disarray, so
Yeah.
it is gonna be every other week from here on out for a bit. But
Yes, but
it'll be there. It'll be there.
it'll be there, and we'll be back for the fall and all the fun that'll have to offer because there's lots of fun stuff coming up. I already know, but in the meantime, we'll be doing our next one will be a 2-part episode because we'll be doing a double album that we've been toying with for a bit. We first find it came up before, but it got more solidified after we did Beyonce's Cowboy Carter, and she covered Blackbird, and we thought, well, I think we have to do the White Album now. So, 2-parter White Album coming up.
Yeah, man. It's we're coming to a landmark episode for us. And it's a landmark album that we know the trials and tribulations of taking on an album like the White Album. So it's exciting. It's nerve-wracking in all honesty, but it's exciting. And hopefully we can score a special friend, a great friend of ours, a special guest. No guarantees, but it's gonna be a doozy. This is gonna be one of the big ones, especially a 2-parter.
It has to be. It's a double. It's possibly the most well-known double album of all time.
Yeah.
So we have to. We cannot half-ass the White Album, so we're not going to. That's part of why we've waited so long to do it. But
yeah, if you're a long-time listener, the level that I'll speak for myself on this one, the level that I hold Timberlake and Beyonce and who we call our Hall of Famers at is nothing near the level that I hold the Beatles at. So there's some nerve-wracking wildness that goes on here.
Yes.
True to yourself stuff here.
Yeah, we've delved into the Beatles a little bit before. We did do Let It Be, but the White Album is another beast entirely.
Most definitely.
But the Beatles are always great to discuss. So I'm happy to be doing this coming up. And just, stay tuned for that. Really is, I mean, stay tuned, and we will see you in 2 weeks, and hopefully you will leave your glass onion full. And we promise you next episode won't be too much of a day.